better, he decided, and that fact gave him considerable peace of mind. Every Sunday afternoon, once he had gotten out of bed and shaken off his aches and pains, he took Michelle to see her mama. The two of them, hand in hand, would stand at the foot of Ellie's bed and stare at her for a good 10 or 15 minutes, and then they would leave. Sometimes Michelle would pick a bouquet of wildflowers and tie them with twine and make a pretty bow. She'd leave them on her mama's pillow so she could smell their sweet fragrance. A couple of times she made a crown of daisies and put them on her mother's head. Her daddy told her the tiara made Mama look real pretty, like a princess. Jake Renard's luck changed a couple of years later when he won $60,000 in a private numbers game. Since it wasn't legal and the government didn't know about it, Jake didn't have to pay taxes on his windfall. He considered using the money to move his wife to a more pleasant setting, but somewhere deep down inside his head he could hear Ellie's voice scolding him for being impractical, wanting to spend the money on something that would do no one any good. And so instead, Jake decided to use a little of the cash to buy the Swan. He wanted his boys to have a future tending bar when they finished growing up, stopped chasing skirts, and settled down with wives and babies to support. The rest of the money he tucked away for his retirement. When Michelle wasn't in school, Jake didn't figure she needed an education, but the state figured she did. He took her everywhere he went. On fishing days, she sat beside him and passed the time talking like a magpie or reading stories to him out of the books she made him take her to the library to get. While he took his afternoon nap, she set the table and her brothers prepared supper. She was quite the little homemaker. She kept an immaculate house, no small feat, given the fact that her father and her brothers were admittedly slovenly. In the summer months, she always had fresh flowers in mason jars on the tables. In the evening, Michelle accompanied Big Daddy to the Swan for the late shift. Some nights, the little girl fell asleep curled up like a tabby cat in the corner of the bar, and he'd have to carry her to the storage room and back, where he had a daybed set up for her. He treasured every minute he had with his daughter because he figured that, like many of the girls in the parish, she'd be pregnant and married by the time she turned 18. It wasn't that he had low expectations for Michelle, but he was a realist, and all the pretty girls married young around Bowen, Louisiana. It was just the way things were, and Jake didn't figure his daughter would turn out any different. There wasn't much for the boys and girls to do in town except to diddle with one another, and it was plain inevitable that girls eventually found themselves in the family way. Jake owned a 1/4 acre of land. He had built a 1-bedroom cabin when he married Ellie, and he added on rooms as his family expanded. When the boys were old enough to help, he raised the roof and created a loft so that Michelle could have some privacy. The family lived deep in the swamp at the end of a winding dirt lane called Mercy Road. There were trees everywhere, some as old as 100 years, and the backyard were 2 weeping willows nearly covered in moss that hung like crocheted scarves from the branches to the ground. When the mist rolled in from the bayou and the wind picked up and began to moan, the moss took on the eerie appearance of ghosts in the moonlight. On those nights, Michelle would scramble down from the loft and sneak into bed with Remy or John Paul. From their house, the neighboring town of St. Clair was a quick 20-minute walk away. There were tree-lined paved streets there, but it wasn't as pretty or as poor as Bowen. Jake's neighbors were used to poverty. They did the best they could to scratch a living out of the swampland and the water, and they scraped together an extra $1 every Wednesday night to play the numbers, in hopes they would catch a windfall the way Jake Renard had. Life took another surprising turn for the Renard family when Michelle entered the 3rd grade at the Horatio Herbert Elementary School. She was assigned a brand new teacher, Miss Jennifer Perrine. During the 4th week of school, Miss Perrine administered the standardized tests, received the results, and then sent an urgent request home with Michelle for a parent-teacher conference. Jake had never gone to one of those before. He figured his daughter had gotten into a spot of trouble, maybe a little fist fight. She could be hot-tempered when pushed to the wall. Her brothers had taught her how to defend herself. She was little for her age, and they assumed she'd be an easy target for the bullies at school to pick on, so they made sure she knew how to fight, and fight dirty. Jake reckoned he'd have to soothe the teacher's nerves. He put on his good Sunday clothes, added a splash of the aqua velva